What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Fantasy Basketball This Week, presented by District of Buckets. I am Tyler Castle, and I will be shortly joining my co-host, Carl Baltimore, and together we are the lead fantasy basketball analyst at District of Buckets. I've been trying to get that right for a couple of takes now, so let's get right into the show. We're back. What's going on, Carl? How are we feeling this week? How did your fantasy basketball team do? I guess it was last week against me.
Last week against you, not well. Last video left a lot of points on the bench. There's a theme for the whole week. Looking at the scores right now for this week, though, looks like I'm coming up. Should catch a dub this week. So
that's good.
How are you doing?
I actually had the pleasure of whooping up on Carl last week. It was a strong effort, but he was more focused on fantasy football, in which I'm sorry about your loss in that, man.
It's all right. I'm used to pain at this point.
I'm opening sore wounds here. Anyways, let's get right into the fantasy basketball stuff. Carl, do you want to start with some overachievers you had?
Yes, I do. Let me just pull it up real quick. Also, in this case, I'd say number one for this past week is Julius Randle. And so Julius Randle, it's kind of weird to say overachieving because I'm still trying to figure out, based on this Knicks roster, like, is he just overachieving like through the early part of the season, or does he have the potential to hold this on for the rest of the year? Like, Julius Randle is absolutely balling out right now. Easily one of my favorite lefties in the league, not named James Harden. So he's currently averaging 21.2 points, 10.5 rebounds, 7.2 assists. Is it a little bit less than a steal, a little less than the block? But the real key to him is that he's shooting 49.5% from the field and 50% from three right now, which is nuts. Like, just an efficiency level that we haven't even seen from him. Like, this is like the Julius Randle that we all thought we were going to get out of college. And I'm saying that I don't think these numbers are sustainable at this level for the entire season, but in that role, he will be putting up big numbers the entire year. So he's worth just a high value spot on your roster right now.
Yeah, I am the personal owner of Julius Randle in our league, and he's been providing very well for me. And there's been some recent Knicks injuries that actually make him more valuable coming up this week. But like Carl said, I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain that kind of production for the rest of the year, but he is at a super high efficiency and he's at a super high usage rate because I'm just going to say something everybody already knows. The Knicks are not a good basketball team. So Julius Randle, he's been playing great for me so far. But I agree completely with Carl. That might be a guy you could sell high. But there's also, if he can manage to maintain this kind of performance, then keep him and ride him out. And he could be a big help in the future. Is there anybody else you thought had overachieved last week, or is achieving just as you had thought they would, but were drafted low in the draft, just kind of putting out more points than you had originally expected?
My next player, Collin Sexton. The other half of the group that they're, or the combination that they're now calling Sexton and Cleveland, Garland, averaging 26 a game, also shooting a blistering 55% from the field and roughly 55% from three as well. Just another person who's playing out of his mind. I think he takes a step back in the future. I love his game. I love his intensity. But it's kind of the same thing as Julius Randle, where it's just efficiency-wise, I just don't think he keeps this up for a majority of the season. I think it's just a hot start. I hope he proved me wrong. Personally love the guy as a player, but I think there's no way he keeps up averaging 26 and making a little bit over half his shots.
Yeah, I would agree with Collin Sexton. Collin Sexton scares me a little bit because almost all of his fantasy production comes from points. Not a high assister, not a high rebounder, and not a high defensive stat guy, although he has been performing pretty well in the steals category recently. It looks like, let's look at his season average. He is averaging 26 points, only 2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.2 blocks a game, and he is averaging almost 2 turnovers a game. So Collin Sexton's a guy that kind of worries me a little bit because, like I said, he relies very heavily on his point production for his fantasy points. But him and Darius Garland have played so well, except Garland did not play very well in his last outing, I believe. Let me check. He had 3 fantasy points in 34 minutes against Atlanta. Not his best performance.
Not the best. Let's see that one.
Right. And then moving on, I got some overachievers myself. I wouldn't necessarily say overachievers, especially coming from a Celtics fan. My guy is Jaylen Brown. I've been so high on Jaylen Brown for so long. I've always said he is the lesser version of Jason Tatum. And you can see that the Celtics have faith in Jaylen Brown because he's taken end of the game shots. They're drawing up plays for him to take the game-winning shot. His usage rate is insane. He just played today against Detroit. Had a phenomenal first half, kind of slowed down a bit in the second. But Jaylen Brown is one of those guys that I think he's going to continue to put up big points. Maybe not as high as he's been putting up. But once again, he's another guy getting high minutes, 34 minutes a game. And he does not rely solely on offense because he is a lanky and active defender. He averaging 2 steals a game right now and almost a block per game right now, grabbing 5 rebounds a game. Jaylen Brown's a guy I really like, and if you were lucky enough to get him in the draft, then he's going to perform for you for a long time. And then my next guy that has been overperforming, Andre Drummond. Oh my God, this guy. Andre Drummond is right now the 2nd best center in fantasy points. He's averaging 43 fantasy points a game, 12 points, 11 rebounds last game against Atlanta. And I mean, the guy just puts up double-digit rebounds every single game. It is ridiculous. It's basically how many points is he going to score? That's how you know if Andre Drummond is going to have a blowout fantasy game. And I don't know if he can keep this production up. It might take a bit of a hit once Kevin Love returns back healthy. But I don't know. If Darius Garland and Collin Sexton keep putting up a ton of shots a game and Darius Garland keeps missing them, then Andre Drummond could have some field days. So Andre Drummond is definitely a guy to watch out.
I will say be wary, though, because historically Andre Drummond has gone on stretches in the beginning of the season. Like there were a couple years back in Detroit where he would go like the first couple weeks and average like 20 and 20. And then that next month, he'll just regress heavily. So just keep an eye out for that if you have Andre Drummond.
Yeah. But man, is he off to a hot start. Nobody really saw that coming. Moving on, we're going to start talking about some guys that have been underperforming that should we be worried about them? Should we move on from them? Is it time to look at a waiver wire guy? Karl, who you got?
My number one for underperformer is Luka Doncic. Luka is bothering me throughout his start to the season. Like we all know the talent's there. We saw him last year, but there were concerns of him beginning of the year, like coming in basketball shape, ready to take on this season. And so far, it's not looking like it. He's 3 of 20 from 3 in his last 3 games, which is terrible. He's shooting 16.1% from 3 during the entire season. And I believe that his production will eventually bounce back up. He's just way too talented. I think as he plays more games, gets in better basketball shape, he'll be able to improve. But I don't know if it's too early or not to say it, but I just don't think the ceiling that we saw from last year is what we're going to see for quite some time, because along with him getting in shape, we also have to see Kristaps Porzingis return to the lineup to give him an extra boost and maybe have some attention taken off him. So I'm saying if you have Luka, this is the lowest he'll probably be valued the entire season. So I would hold on to him if I have him. If you do not have him, I would trade for him. Just because even if it's not quite the jump to the elite level, you might be able to get someone who's just completely upset at his production so far and get him at a value right now that you'll probably never see during his time in fantasy basketball.
Yeah, I completely agree. He is listed as day-to-day right now with a bruised quad, so don't necessarily worry about that. But even in his slumps, he's averaging, let's see, he's averaging, why can't I find it? Oh, he's averaging 40 points per game. 40 fantasy points per game. Sorry, I don't want to confuse people. He's averaging 40 points per game. But even in his slumps, he's playing really well, fantasy-wise. That is definitely a guy that you can look to trade for if you have some flaky basketball fans in your league. Try and take them out from under him. I've got a question for you. Would you give up Julius Randle for Luka Doncic right now? Since you said Julius Randle was flying high.
Oh, without a doubt.
Really?
I just think at this point it's just from where the numbers are. Eventually he'll get somewhat close to those averages that you saw from last year. I feel like, assuming he fights through this tough period of the season, and I'm more than willing to bet on Julius Randle regressing and Luka improving his production for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's right. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is taking way too many shots right now, taking away from Luka's production. And we need to get Kristaps back in the lineup so Luka can get another guy that is distracting to the defense. Also a guy that can make plays for Luka. All right, Karl, who's your next guy on the Underachievers list?
Underachievers list, Devin Booker, my next guy. So the Suns are off to a pretty hot start so far, and Devin Booker's always been one of my favorite players to watch. And the thing with him is that this team is right now such a well-oiled machine that his volume really isn't necessary. I think throughout the middle of the season, like as we get towards the middle of the season, like you'll see it, start to ramp up a little bit closer to what he used to be, just like last year. But like his points averages are down, but he's shooting around the same percent. He's shooting around the same percentage from three. Field goal percentage looks great at 49% in comparison to past years. He's someone that I feel like may not have a super high ceiling for fantasy, most because he needs to have point production. He only averages about 4 rebounds and about 3.8 assists per game. And those are numbers I don't really think are going to improve too much. So he's going to have to score more. So I don't think he has a high ceiling, but he will have more volume given to him throughout the season than what you're seeing right now. So a little worried about him just for, if you're looking for someone who can potentially, give you an extra boost to try to carry your team, but he'll be solid for most of the season.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of pieces around him. He's got Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, the Suns are one of the deepest teams in the league right now. They're so, like you said, well-oiled. Like they're just running so smoothly right now. And that is what we like to call the Chris Paul effect. A guy that can really bring the team together. Captain.
Oh, man. If only Ayton could actually play up to his strength, man, it'd be amazing. They'd be unbeatable.
Well, good news for Ayton. They aren't drug testing anymore, so he'll probably get to play a full season. Okay, moving on to my underachievers. Once again, I'm so sad I got to bring up his name because he's on my team. LeBron James.
Back again.
I know. I'm not even a huge LeBron fan, but what he's doing right now is underperforming, and it's going to ramp up. Like, I'd be an idiot to bet against LeBron, so I'm going to continue to say that he's underperforming, and it's going to continue to ramp up as the season goes on. We know he loves to have the ball in his hands, and he's a playmaker. He's a guy that you don't have to worry about getting a bunch of points because night in and night out he will. He's going to get a bunch of assists night in and night out. He's going to get rebounds night in and night out, steals, blocks. He's a stat stuffer. You don't need to worry about LeBron James. I'm begging you, if you have him, please do not trade him away for something lesser. And if you have the opportunity to trade for him, please trade for LeBron. He's not going to disappoint you. And the dude doesn't miss games. He plays, granted, he is on a weird schedule right now, coming off of a short rest from last season. And he's getting older, but what we say that every year. We say
not all about any minutes restrictions or anything.
Yeah. LeBron, he's we say something about him every year. His production's gonna fall off this year. This isn't gonna be the year.
I will say fantasy wise though, I'm probably on the other spectrum of this where I think that other side of the spectrum here where I think he stealing wise, like on an average basis, may not be too far away from his max production. So like when you look at weekly production, because I just think that there's going to be a point where they have to do, they're going to decide to start, using their depth a little bit more, and they already use it pretty well. I'm not saying he drops it all. Not this for everyone watching. Like I'm not saying anything negative about LeBron James. He is the best player in the world. I'm just saying for fantasy reasons, like there's no reason for the Lakers to even have him in positions where he's going to go have games and go drop like 50 or 60 at all. Like this year, they just run too deep. So I'm just saying there's a chance that it's a minor risk because we all love LeBron James here, both LeBron guys here. There's a minor risk that his ceiling may not be as high in fantasy basketball as you think.
Yeah, and that's why he didn't get drafted until the 10th pick in our draft. Last night, he played against Memphis, only played 8 minutes. It was because of his ankle that's been bothering him since a couple of games ago. But that's a good sign for me as a LeBron owner. Please rest him if he's got a little tweak of it on his ankle, because I know the next time he's going to come out, he's going to give me 50 fantasy points. So I don't want to risk injuring one of my best players because you guys want to run the score up. Rest LeBron. I'll take my 50 points later on in the week. I don't need 50 points every night from him. I'll take my 50 points later on. You heard it here first. Don't worry about LeBron. My second underachiever, Bam Adebayo.
Ooh.
Bam Adebayo is underachieving. The Heat have undergone a rough patch in the beginning of the season.
Safe to say.
Goran Dragic coming off the bench. Tyler Hero, the starting point guard. Duncan Robinson, the guy I praised last week, couldn't hit a 3 to save his life. Bam Adebayo is going. He is the. All right, I'm gonna make some people mad.
Just say it out loud. Say it now.
Bam Adebayo is the best player on the Heat. Bam Adebayo is the best player on the Heat, and as soon as they learn to chuck the shots up when Bam is around the rim, they're going to be a better team. Quit trying to run plays through Tyler Hero and get the ball to Bam.
Oh.
I love Tyler Hero too. I love Tyler Hero. I love Duncan Robinson. I love Jimmy Butler. But Bam is the guy. He's the guy. And the Heat are going to figure it out eventually. They got through a majority of the playoffs running their offense through Bam, doing pick and rolls. They tore apart the Celtics by doing pick and rolls with Bam Adebayo. He is the best player on the Heat, and the Heat will realize it as the season goes on. His production will continue to ramp up. I'm going to look at some of his numbers right here. Bam Adebayo averaging 40.2 fantasy points a game. Sounds pretty good, right? It's more than Luka.
Sounds good, yeah.
In 3 of his last 4 games, he hasn't scored 20 points, which is unlike him. In 3 of his last 4 games, he hasn't gotten 10 rebounds. Not like him. Bam Adebayo he's averaging 1 block per game right now. That is not like him. He is a little high on the turnover spectrum. I remember it was 2 days before Christmas, he had 7 turnovers against the Magic or something like that. So that kind of is carrying his turnover averages right now. But that Bam Adebayo is a guy that I will not worry about, and is a guy I would buy low if I didn't have him on my team. That is a guy I'm seeking out because I just love watching him play. He's kind of like a Marcus Smart to me, but I'll preach about Marcus Smart another day.
Let me just add something to what you said. What do you think about this Jimmy Butler easing his way back into the roster? Because I know he had, after his injury, his first game back, he played about 27 minutes, put up 2 points. I think was it 2 points, 3 rebounds, 27 minutes of action. I just want to know what your thoughts are on how Jimmy Butler could potentially affect Bam in the future.
Jimmy Butler is not a guy I am very high on in fantasy, if you're talking like pick him up or not, just because he doesn't care how he plays. It's literally all about if the team's winning or not. And he's made that very clear. If I don't have to take the shots, I'm not taking the shots because I'm gonna make somebody else more open. But his presence on the court is good for Bam because he does draw those double teams when he's driving into the lane. Yeah, I don't worry about the Heat at all. I think they're one of the better teams in the East. The best team in the East behind the Celtics, obviously. But this isn't a debate about who's the best team in the East and why it's the Celtics. It's a fantasy basketball show.
We could turn it into that, but this is definitely not. This is not the time.
All right. So Jimmy Butler's return, good for Bam Adebayo, whoever the hell they're putting at small forward off the bench. That is our underachievers for the week, and we're going to be moving on to everybody's favorite segment. Karl, will you introduce it for us this week?
Oh, baby. Let's go. Now, number one question you're having every week, you're looking at your scores. How can I improve my team? It's time to go. The waivers. Who are we picking up on the waivers? Because the waivers are where champions are made. So let's take a look at my list I have so far. Number one guy I want you guys to pay attention to. He's behind our threshold of ownership in leagues. Is George Hill for OKC. So George Hill has always been just a nice, solid point guard that just bounced around the league. But in OKC, he's got a really big role in this with all these young guys on the roster. He only plays about 25 minutes a game, but he's averaging 15, 2 and 4 on like 56% shooting and 45% from three. Now those numbers, percentage-wise, may not sustain it. Probably won't sustain it 56 and 45, but he is a key cog in that team and that offense. And he's one of the best playmakers that they have outside of like SGA. So I look forward to him just continuing in that role and being able to produce on high efficiency looks the entire season. But the only limiting factor is the fact that he is going to play like 25 minutes a game. That's it.
Yeah, you're kind of relying on him to be pretty efficient from the field whenever you start him in your fantasy lineup. But he's only taken up in 17% of leagues. So if you're in a deep league with 12 teams or something like that, look for George Hill. He's a guy that could help you guys off the waivers, especially if he has a 4-game week. Definitely look at George Hill. All right, next up on your waiver wire list.
All right, staying true to the alma mater here, Mizzou. Jordan Clarkson, the Utah Jazz. Also staying true to guards. Had a lot of guards this week. Everyone except for Julius Randle so far on my list. Jordan Clarkson is a necessity for the Utah Jazz to be a good team. His scoring off the bench in limited minutes, right now it's 22.2 per game. Shooting about 47.4 from the field, 40% from three. Actually a pretty good rebounder as a guard too. Averages about 4 rebounds a game so far, a little more, probably 4.8. Jordan Clarkson, even though the minutes may not seem like anything right now, he's a guy, as the war of attrition continues on with lineups throughout the league, someone's gonna get banged up here or there. We've seen Mitchell get off to a slow start up in Utah. Jordan Clarkson is going to be needed to put the ball in the bucket for the Utah Jazz to be any good this year. And as we're doing a pretty good job of doing that in limited looks, and we'll probably get increased playing time as the season goes on. He's someone not owned in plenty of leagues that I think you can pick up, have on your bench. just hold on to him, look at his usage, but definitely a guy that you want to keep an eye on for waivers.
Yeah, and like you said, only about 20-something, 22 minutes per game, but he's only been held to double or single digits in points one time, and he's a factor on defense as well. So Jordan Clarkson is a guy that actually picked up on waivers this week, and I had a trade offered for him.
Of course.
I forget who I was trying to get. Our good friend Anthony. He needed a guard. He needed a guard, and he was looking to move James Wiseman. I tried to talk him into Bogdanovich. He wanted an OG and a newbie, which is another guy I picked up off waivers. And then I tried to convince him of Jordan Clarkson, but he's just not convinced with him coming off the bench. But man, Jordan Clarkson for James Wiseman. I almost made that deal. That's how you know Jordan Clarkson is worth a pickup.
Hey, far. Other than that, I'm glad you didn't give him Wiseman.
You didn't take. Hey, trade relations are still good, so I don't want to flame them too hard because honestly, James Wiseman's gone down a little bit of a slope. I have to keep my options available in my fantasy league. I can't give away all my tips and tricks because then you guys are just going to take all the people I want. So yeah, Jordan Clarkson, guy to look out for on the Utah Jazz, a struggling Utah Jazz with not a lot of scoring production right now. Is that all you got for your waiver wire list? Is that your fringe guys list?
Yeah, fringe guys.
All right, that's Carl's fringe guys list. Up next, my fringe guys list. This is where I live and die. This is where I've made all my money so far. I'm 1-0, almost 2-0. My waiver wire guy, Shaun Holmes of the Kings, center power forward position. Dude is going off right now for somebody that went undrafted in our draft. Not a guy that everybody had a lot of faith in to start the year, but he's playing a ton of minutes. As of the last 3 games, he went from 25 minutes per game and he's jumped all the way up to about 34 minutes per game. He's a force on the boards. He's scoring a lot of points. He gets a lot of steals and a lot of blocks. The dude is a guy that you're probably going to want to pick up off the waiver wires if he's still available. 70.6% ownage rate. I kind of worded that weird. He's owned in 70.6% of leagues. So look for Shaun Holmes. The dude is a force to be reckoned with at that center position. Really outshine. He would be one of the main center storylines this year if it weren't for Christian Wood, just because Christian Wood that dude's hooping. I'm so glad I got him on my team. Anything to say about Shaun Holmes?
You really covered all the bases. Just love to see him actually putting production on the court. He's been fun fact, a 2K hidden gem for most of his career due to his ability to rebound. You know, if you just shout out to anyone who's ever played with Shaun Holmes in 2K, he's finally doing it in real life. Just happy for the guy right now.
Yep, go Shaun Holmes. He's ranked the 11th center right now and is only owned in 70% of leagues. So definitely go look at him. Up next on my fringe guys list, the guy you should definitely be looking at, Keldon Johnson of the San Antonio Spurs. Keldon Johnson is he's in his second season. He's owned in almost 40% of leagues, and he is a starter on the San Antonio Spurs. He is playing about 30 minutes a game, and it's a guy that maybe not a lot of people are huge on or have heard a lot about. But in his last game against the Lakers, granted, LeBron was out this game, he had 26 points, 10 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, a block, and 4 turnovers for a total of 49 fantasy points. And that was kind of like his breakout performance. He's definitely a guy that I think people should be looking out for, especially because of how many minutes he's getting to play on a Spurs team that relies pretty heavily on Murray and DeRozan. So definitely keep an eye out on Keldon Johnson. He is, let's see how many games he's playing this week. Keldon Johnson is playing 1, 2, 3, 4 games this week. So a guy you're going to want to have on your team if you need to fill that small forward position. He plays against the Clippers, the Lakers, and then the T-Wolves twice. Anything to say about Keldon Johnson, Karl?
Just based off of Marcus Aldridge's injury, even like when he comes back, he's not the same player that he once was. He's just on a downward trend right now through his career. Still solid, but it's going to present more opportunities to a lot of the younger guys in the lineup for the season. So I'd say go out and grab him if you can.
Yeah. My next guy on Fringe Guys is Josh Jackson. And this is kind of a weird one because he actually went down with an injury earlier today with his right ankle, and there hasn't been a lot of news reported about his injury. Plus, Blake Griffin has returned from concussion protocol, so he's back in the lineup, which means Josh Jackson's usage is going to go a little lower than before. But while Blake Griffin was injured, he was playing 28 minutes per game and was averaging about 20 points per game, 17 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block. He's one of those guys he's a force to be reckoned with on defense, and not all of his production comes from that point scoring. But in the minutes he played today against the Celtics, he looked really smooth. He was hitting some threes. It's unfortunate to see him go down. That could be a guy for when he does come back to look at, because Blake Griffin is constantly out. He is very injury prone. Josh Jackson seems to be the beneficiary of when Blake Griffin is out of the lineup. Big KU guy, right, Karl?
I can't stand KU.
All right. And then last one. This is a surprise one. I didn't even tell you about this one. Peyton Pritchard.
Oh, dog. Absolute dog. Yes.
Absolute dog. Won the Cousy Award last year.
Yes. All in. Absolutely for the future.
Peyton Pritchard is a guy who is the beneficiary of Kemba Walker being out for the Boston Celtics. He is averaging 21 minutes a game, but he's extremely efficient when he does. He's averaging, oh man, I'm really shooting myself in the foot here. He's averaging 17.7 fantasy points a game. But when he does play, or when he does get the ball in his hands, he's a guy that creates a lot of turnovers. He averages 1.7 steals a game right now, which is huge. That's 8 points by himself if he gets 2 steals in a game. And he gets quite a few assists. It says he only averages 2.2, but that stems from his early games where he wasn't allowed to hold the ball very much. The Celtics are still gaining confidence in this guy. This isn't a guy you should pick up right away, but keep him on your watch list because Kemba Walker's probably not returning till middle of February. And Peyton Pritchard seems to be one of the main point guards for the Boston Celtics, besides Marcus Smart, who tends to play a shooting guard role anyways. But definitely a guy to put on your watch list. Please don't pick him up yet. He's not ready yet. But there will come a day in which Peyton Pritchard is going to be good for your fantasy basketball team, and he's owned in 2.5% of fantasy leagues, which is up from his original 0.3% of fantasy leagues before this week. If you're in a deep league and you have to have a point guard filled for a specific day, Peyton Pritchard could be one of those guys. He's another guy that's playing 4 games this week. So he could put up a decent amount of numbers for you. And what can you say about Peyton Pritchard? The dude, he's the biggest hustler on and off the court. He makes Marcus Smart looks like he's walking around and not hustling, not playing defense. That's how much Peyton Pritchard is moving around.
Fully agree. I was high on him before the draft. Glad to see he's finally paying dividends in the league.
I can't wait till he starts shooting the ball because the dude's got a chopper on him.
Also, just a random side shout out. Oregon basketball turning up, really turning up with some prospects every year. It seems like over the last couple of years, we've seen some guys go straight from Oregon. You know, at least find a small place in the league. Nothing special yet, but they have a good program up there. Just want to shout them out.
Yep, definitely. That's gonna do it for fringe guys for me. If you got anybody else, Karl?
No one really can think of right now. I'd say, I just gonna use. By the platform right now, I just want to shout out Rui Hachimura, just because Rui has a role to fill, a big role to fill. Is coming back, getting game shape. You know, was out with the eye infection for the last couple of weeks. His first game in Chicago, had like 17 and 5, couple assists. He's someone that I think will do nothing but trend upward for most of the season. Just that the opportunity's there, and he's probably the only other person that I feel they can grasp. Like he'll have to turn up and be one of the best rebounders on the team. He's going to be forced to essentially play a little bit more interior defense than normal. Not the best defender, but just out of sheer opportunity, I'd watch list Rui Hachimura if he's not picked up anymore.
Yeah, Rui Hachimura. He's got a crazy plus-minus for the Wizards. All right, that's going to do it for fringe guys. Any injury guys that we need to be worried about?
Yes. So my number one injury guy right now is KarlAnthony Towns. Not necessarily worried about. It's just kind of we actually got a good bit of news earlier in the week, hearing that his wrist doesn't require surgery at this time. His left wrist. I want to say it was dislocated. I have to look into exactly what it was, but hearing that his wrist doesn't require surgery, he'll have some time to let it heal, but you aren't really worried about losing him for the rest of the season at this point, and that team can't function without him. It looks like a bunch of chickens running with their heads cut off on offense if KarlAnthony Towns is not playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that just cements what his value is right there. You know, hope that all works out. Hope his injury, he heals up pretty quick, but second he's back to being the cat that we know and love.
Yeah. And he's come off a rough year. Yeah. If you haven't heard about it. So he's probably not rushing to get back, but he's definitely a point getter in fantasy, but he is a little bit of an injury risk. My injury guy, there's been some updates on Kristaps. He is now going full speed at practice, and Rick Carlisle said that he could return in the next couple of weeks. It's not that far-fetched. So that's good news for Kristaps Porzingis owners. John Morant is another guy that went down this week. Luckily, it was only a sprained ankle. It looked kind of gross when it originally happened.
No structural damage.
Right.
So what did they say? Was it a couple months he's out?
Yeah, they want to be really safe with him, so they're not gonna rush him back. That is a guy I was kind of nervous about when I saw him go down, and that was a guy I was nervous about drafting just because he plays so explosive and he's such a skinny guy that there's always going to be a risk of injury with him. It says he'll miss 3 to 5 weeks with a grade 2 sprain. I wouldn't be surprised if it was closer to 5 weeks. And then lastly, TJ Warren. The dude wasn't having necessarily the greatest year fantasy-wise to begin with. But everybody knew he was injured from the beginning. So if you took him, you were taking a risk. But he's getting Karl had him. But he's getting surgery on his foot.
He's going to miss. ESPN said that it's repairing a fracture in his foot. So he's going to miss a significant time. I don't think they're going to know exactly what it is until he gets the surgery. So he's going to be almost an afterthought in fantasy basketball for most of the season.
Yeah. Don't necessarily rely on him coming back because even when he does, it's not going to be anything great if it's anything like the beginning of his season. Kemba Walker is, like I said earlier, is projected to come back mid-February. I would also not be surprised if that was pushed to later just because the Celtics are poised to make a deep playoff run. So they're going to take their time with him. And especially if Peyton Pritchard is producing the way he is, then they're going to be fine. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are carrying the scoring load, the highest scoring duo in all of basketball right now. So shout out STL. But yeah, that's all I got for injury, guys.
All right.
I think it's that time of the show where we shout out our subscribers.
Oh yeah, let me add a special one real quick. Let me pull him up. Shout out to my boy Mike, who just started his account to, him and I think my friend Evan to start sports picks, and it is called. Sorry, pulling it up. Yeah, it's a Madmen Handicapping on Twitter at _M _ handicapping. So I got to know. Mostly so far a lot of football talk, but eventually they're gonna get into picks. Can't wait. Really glad they're doing that. Shout out to them. That's number one.
Yep. And then shout out to my friend Anthony that I was talking about earlier, wanted me to trade away a newbie for Wiseman. I'm thinking about that one. He had kind of a rough week. He's owner of John Morant and Kelly Oubre. And Kelly Oubre not playing well.
Yeah.
So shout out AFAR. Sorry for the tough week. Anthony's the guy that I'm actually beating this week in fantasy basketball. It's like everybody we talk about, I'm just beating in fantasy basketball.
So far through 2 weeks, you're right.
Shout out to the 69 nice viewers we had last week. We really appreciate you guys watching. If you want to see more of this content, we're going to be doing this weekly. It'll be uploading every Monday, so that way you guys have time to pick up some people on your waiver wires. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about who to sit or start in your fantasy league this week. If there's a trade offer you have that you want to discuss, just let us know. We'd love to interact with you guys. Like I said, we really appreciate everybody that's watched the video from last week. And all of our socials are down below. If you need to check us out, go into the description. Karl has a blog post that is going up
later tonight, probably around 10 Eastern.
So by the time you guys see this video or are listening to it on SoundCloud, it will already be up on the District of Buckets blog, the link for that is down below. So yeah, once again, thank you guys. This has been really fun. We enjoy doing this. It's been a cool project to start, and we hope we get to keep going. Sponsor of this video, along with Karl's sponsor, is Greenlight Hoops. My buddy Brandon Reichert started a basketball training LLC. He is currently taking clients, and this is just some of his merch. Pretty dope. Stoplight with the basketballs in it, pink hoodie. I'll leave this. Yeah, you gotta get you one. I'll leave the link for his Instagram down below in the description as well. So thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.